Welcome to the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Together we explore the vast landscapes of life, delving into the rich soil of experiences, sowing the seeds of curiosity, and harvesting the profound wisdom that each episode unfolds.
Hi, welcome to Harvesting Wisdom. I'm Dr. Roselle, the Chief Operating Officer for Urban Farming Education. I'm filling in for Mike McMahon, who's still visiting our projects in Malawi and Zimbabwe. So today I have a very special guest. We have the Mayor of Tempe. Super excited to have you here. We've talked to a District 8. We've talked to a City Council person from Chandler. And really we're excited because as you look out the window, and you could tell by the cupcakes we have here today, we're excited about the light rail.
Absolutely.
Super excited about the light rail. We're going to talk a little bit about the light rail, but also you and I had a brief conversation before the podcast started about different sustainability initiatives and partnerships you have with the ASU and other groups. And we're excited to talk about those as well. So why don't we dive right in? Talk to you a little bit about your background and how you entered into that life of becoming a mayor of Tempe, because it's not something you probably just woke up one day and said, I want to be the mayor.
No, most certainly did not. What I can tell you is I first moved to Arizona back in 2003. And it was initially just to go to graduate school at Arizona State University. I was pursuing a master's in educational policy studies. I really wanted to be a principal or perhaps a superintendent at some point. And that's how I ended up in this area. It was not for the purpose of actually getting involved in politics. However, I was involved in student government my whole life. It was something that from the 5th grade on was clearly a passion. I had a lot of conversations with my parents about foreign policy and domestic issues. And so from a very early age, I kind of took to that life of public service and trying to make sure that I understood as much about public policy in a whole sort of multitude of areas. And so when I got down here and was working on my master's degree, I got very interested in local government and thought to myself, maybe at some point I should consider running for the city council. So I actually ran for the council back in 2006 for the first time. Wasn't successful in that election, but then ran again in 2008 and won a council seat. At that point, I was only 29 years old. I was the first African-American to ever win a seat on the city council in Tempe. And I was thrust into this whole world all of a sudden of talking about things that I understood, such as neighborhood issues and things of that nature, but then a lot of things that I frankly had no experience with, like zoning, which is such a big deal when you're actually a city council member or a mayor for a local community, is trying to figure out how that city is going to grow and what height, density, parking requirements, things of that nature are going to look like. So I got thrust into that job, but I frankly really enjoyed it. I did that job for 8 years and left the city council in July of 2016 and thought I was sort of done with the political arena. I was going to go find other things to do that sort of also interested me. And but like a lot of folks, you leave the public world and decide at some point you kind of want to go back. And so I ended up running for mayor and got elected mayor in March of 2020 and got reelected in 2024. And so I've now just finished up my 5th year as mayor and my 13th year overall on the city council. And I've spent most of that time working in areas such as sort of affordable housing, economic development, transportation issues, sustainability. So, it really has been a wild ride, quite candidly, but I've really enjoyed it. If you like public policy and you like people, this probably is the job for you.
You know, you've talked about a great journey, and you pivoted. I actually have a background in education. I was a teacher and a principal, and I did community engagement. So that to hear that pivot and still be in the public realm to me is exciting. Looking at your experience as a city council man and transitioning into the mayor, what were some of the high points of your career as a city councilor? You look back and say, you know what, that is what I'm the most proud of.
I would say probably was my focus on affordable housing. I either chaired or was the co-chair of our affordable housing subcommittee during the entire 8 years I was first on the city council. And there were a number of developments that were approved or built during the time that I was on that council. Our Gracie's Village project for folks who needed affordable housing, our Encore on Farmer project, which was for seniors who also needed to have affordable dwelling units right in the middle of our downtown. Apache ASL meaning American Sign Language. It was Apache ASL Trails. That was maybe the 14th or 15th community of that kind for folks who might have hearing or vision challenges, right also on the light rail line on Apache Boulevard. So frankly, from my perspective, that was the thing that I was the most proud of, that I talked a lot about the need to create more affordable housing in our community, but we actually got a lot done. Because sometimes people get frustrated. They hear folks in politics talking about the need for affordable and workforce housing, but at the end of the day, there aren't any revenue streams, or they don't see any actual projects coming out of the ground. And what people want most are results. It's like the people say, don't talk about it, be about it. Talking is cheap, but actually, if you really want to do something that means something for the people in this community, you need to produce high quality, safe, affordable units for people in our community who really need them. So that for me was the passion that fueled my 8 years on the city council, and actually was one of the passions that fueled me to run for mayor back in 2020.
You bring up a great point. When people think about sustainability, they usually focus in on one piece.
Yeah.
It could be solar panels, it could be electric cars, but one of the pieces that a lot of times people overlook is people. Mm-hmm. And from a business standpoint, when you look at a business or a community, really you're looking at all resources, and one of your resources is people. And if you don't treat any one of those resources in a way where it's going to continue to grow and prosper, then your community, your business is going to fail.
Yeah.
So this is the perfect transition. Whenever somebody brings up housing or educating workforce, that's actually a sustainable initiative.
Okay.
Because that's part of your workforce, and if you don't do that, then you can't go forward.
Absolutely.
One of the things that we do want to talk about, in addition to thinking about affordable housing, is transportation. Mm-hmm. So I know that a lot of people have heard about the light rail, and they've heard it from different perspectives. But let's just back out and say, as a community of Tempe and Phoenix, what does the light rail mean to you as the mayor of Tempe?
It means connectivity for the residents in the city of Tempe, but also the residents of the cities of Phoenix and Mesa as well. In a world where people spend more and more time on social media and not really communicating with one another in person, the notion of connectivity, I think, is even more critical than it's frankly ever been. For people to get out of their homes, to get off of devices, and to spend time in coffee shops, in bakeries, in restaurants, in other kinds of establishments, actually sitting face to face and having conversations like the one that we're having right now. And so from my perspective, that is what light rail means to me. And what transportation modes mean to me. It's also about the ability to ensure that people can get around an increasingly populated valley without the use of a car, if that's what they choose to do. Gas prices many times are very high. Some people don't have the ability to afford a car or the requisite insurance that comes with it. And the light rail is a very affordable way to get around multiple parts of our greater Phoenix metro area and to get to work or to get to social events or things of that nature. I also think it's really critically important that we teach our children how to use public transportation so that they have the ability to get around without the use of a car. There are a lot of kids now that we frankly know that are deferring or delaying getting their driver's licenses because as we begin to build out a much more interesting, expansive multimodal transportation system, they're basically saying, well, Mom, Dad, why do I need to get a car when I can actually get around using bus rapid transit, when I can get around using light rail, when I can get around using streetcar, or I can even hop on a bicycle and use a lot of our bike paths around the community. So frankly, from my perspective, I think that connectivity is critically important so we maintain that connection to one another as humans, and some people have other safe and lower cost ways of getting to work and both social events.
Yeah, you brought up a lot of great points. For looking at the sustainability side, there's a lot of pieces we can look at. Yes, it definitely reduces your carbon footprint, which is great. The cost savings is great. The convenience level is great. All of those are great attributes of having mass transportation. One of the things that when I told my little brother back in DC that we were getting the light rail, he said, taking the light rail into DC was one of my favorite things to do. He actually enabled him to take classes. Mm-hmm. And they set aside cars in DC where they had classes for a pre-university so that they can do professional development on the time. So one of the things he said, it's a great time to de-stress, to unwind. He said getting on an air-conditioned car and using that as a way to transport from work to home, he said it's been great, you're not stressed out. So all those are great reasons. And you said to me before we started too that there's a plan to expand.
Yes.
One of my best memories of riding a light rail recently was in DC, getting on the metro and going to a ball game. It was so much more convenient.
Yeah.
It was so much more efficient. So talk to us about those plans of how the light rail has actually been expanded.
So yeah, we're having a conversation right now with the city of Mesa to expand the Mill Avenue modern streetcar, which is currently only in the downtown Tempe area, to expand that eastbound on Rio Salado Parkway to connect to the city of Mesa and more specifically the Cub Stadium. And so from our perspective, we never wanted the system to be just Tempe specific. We were building a starter line for the purpose of actually later on partnering with one of our adjacent municipalities and creating a truly regional transportation network. And so I'm very excited. I had the opportunity to work with former Mesa Mayor John Giles on that initiative for the last 2 or 3 years. Very excited to continue that partnership under their new mayor, Mayor Mark Freeman. And it's something that, frankly, both our residents and the residents of the city of Mesa greatly support. They recognize how important that connectivity is between both of our cities and, of course, the city of Phoenix as well. And I should also say, it's really important to thank a lot of the elected officials and community leaders that supported these efforts for the years before they actually were built. Because quite honestly, we know getting the light rail in some portions of town, frankly, was a huge challenge politically. There were a lot of people who tried to make it a liability. We don't want light rail. We don't want to be like DC or New York City or Chicago. And so there were a lot of folks who really pushed back and fought back against these kinds of efforts for years. But I want to thank the elected officials who had the foresight and the judgment and the wisdom to see how important these multimodal transportation systems truly are, not just to the city of Tempe, but frankly to the entire greater Phoenix metro area. So I just have to make sure to give those folks a shout out and some props as we're here having this conversation. Sometimes having vision is difficult. Sometimes it gets you screamed at by people, but honestly, that's why you do these jobs. It's to not just simply take care of the things that are going on in the present, even though that is part of your job. It's to see 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road and to set the community up for much success, even after you might be gone from elected office.
Okay, you've really set me up here with this conversation. Yeah. So I think you're exactly right. To do something in isolation is difficult, but when you have to partner with 2, 3, 4 other cities, it makes it more of a challenge. So the fact that you were able to communicate, partner with City of Phoenix and Mesa is incredible. But a lot of times when people look at a sustainability issue, they get trapped in thinking about the here and now. And you've kind of alluded to it. Where do you see this going out through the greater Tempe's Phoenix area? What is your vision on going forward 10, 15 years on the impact this will have in the community?
I think it's going to be critically important for not just simply growth in terms of bringing in more people, but obviously too sustainability for the businesses that are along these light rail and transit lines. One of the biggest things, the stories that doesn't always get told about the modern streetcar on Mill Avenue in Tempe. When folks were saying this is a terrible idea, the word boondoggle was used many times. Why would anyone want to use that thing? But the fact of the matter is, it was the downtown property owners on Mill Avenue when we had a roughly $12 to $13 million funding gap over 10 years ago. They were the ones that volunteered to raise their own assessments in our downtown Mill Avenue district to cover that funding gap because they recognized how critically important that infrastructure investment was going to be to really stabilizing what they were trying to do in their buildings on both the east and west side of Mill Avenue. And quite honestly, a lot of the growth that we're seeing and a lot of the stability that we're seeing in the reinvestment the city's making in Mill Avenue is because of that modern streetcar investment. So, but I think that's a really important story because the stories many times came out at the time and even sometimes persist to this day, well, that the merchants on Mill Avenue didn't want this. The property owners on Mill Avenue didn't want it. And frankly, as someone who has lived in Tempe for 22 years, and was on the city council at the time that these debates and discussions were happening, nothing could be further from the truth. Not only did those folks want it, but they raised the additional capital to make sure that that project happened. Because what they told us was, we think with a bus line, if there's a funding cut somewhere, whether it's local, regional, or national, a bus line can be cut like that. But if you actually invest in tracks in the street, that actually shows the city and the region's commitment to permanent reinvestment in that area, and therefore it makes them wanting to invest money a much safer bet, frankly. And so from my standpoint, I want to thank those folks, all of those folks, whether it was the elected officials, the property owners, the merchants, and folks of that nature who had a vision for what this system could frankly look like with light rail, streetcar, and our other modes of transit, and many times withstood a lot of slings and arrows to get us over the finish line.
So now that it's complete, you again bring up a lot of great points. What does it look like from the outside perspective as far as people wanting to invest in the city? I know that when I traveled overseas or to different cities that have modern transportation or light rail systems, it's a selling point for the city. It's ease of transportation, so they incorporate it into their tourism. So what does it look like for tourism in Tempe? What does it look like for outside vendors coming in wanting to reinvest? I'm sure it's got to be appealing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think of all the new hotels as an example that have come to the city of Tempe in the last 5 to 6 years. We have a Canopy Hotel, which is a Hilton brand. We've got a new Westin Hotel, and we have a new Omni Hotel right at the southeast corner of Millen University. None of those buildings were there before. And quite candidly, the existence of streetcar and light rail and all of these modes of transit were reasons why they chose to locate in that area. None of them ever came to me at any given point in time when I was a city council member or now currently as mayor and said, we think these things are going to be a detriment to the area, and therefore we're choosing to pull our investments or not set down roots here. The fact of the matter is those investments were why they chose to locate in downtown Tempe and in the Mill Avenue district. And so, I really feel it is kind of important for people like me to be sort of an evangelist on things of this nature and to tell people, when folks say to you that these are not good investments, that they're frankly bad for business or that they're bad for private investment, nothing could be further from the truth. And so we've got a restaurant space in Tempe that we've got a lot of excitement about right now that's right at the corner of Mill and Fifth, but it's right directly in front of a streetcar stop. And that's one of the things that several of the restaurateurs who've expressed interest in taking over that site have said is one of the critical reasons why they want it to be there, is because why they want to be there is because it's not just, they're not reliant completely just on the car traffic, but they also recognize they have a streetcar stop that's going to drop customers off directly in front of their restaurant, which is going to support their business.
And honestly, when you look at Tempe, this is something that very much aligns when I think of Tempe as far as their infrastructure on where the city is going as a whole. I went to ASU before 2000, and the transformation I've seen in the city is incredible. So when you look at the overall investment, when you look at the overall sustainability movement for Tempe, how does this fit into other initiatives that are kind of dovetailing it and attracting business and making life in Tempe, the quality of life go up? Well,
the sustainability movement is really critical, especially for folks who are moving here from other parts of the country or even other parts of the world. If you are concerned that you may not have enough water, it's going to make you not want to invest in the region. But obviously, when they recognize that we do have enough water and that we make sure that for new developments that are coming online, that we have a 100-year water supply, that gives people the comfort and the confidence to say that I can really set down roots in Tempe or the greater Phoenix metro area. When I think about a lot of the work, I know I talked earlier about the Mill Avenue refresh that we're doing, which is a multi-million-dollar project. One of the things that we're doing is adding 120 new trees into the downtown. We're trying to make sure, as we're sitting here today and it's 115 degrees outside, that people have the ability to use all of these public spaces, not 9 months out of the year, but 12 months out of the year. And one of the better ways to do that is to ensure that there is shade cover and tree cover, frankly, kind of pumping natural oxygen back into the air, and that you can actually walk down Mill Avenue or walk down other streets, frankly, in the valley without feeling like you're going to, frankly, risk your life being outside in July or August. And so, part of our initiative in redoing our downtown is not just about bringing in new businesses and not just about fixing irrigation lines or electrical lines, but it's also about adding that new shade canopy that we really think is going to be critically important to making Mill Avenue sustainable for decades and generations to come. So I think that, and you talked about housing as an example earlier. I mean, housing sustainability is not just about the affordability of your particular dwelling unit. It's about what are your utility bills, quite honestly? What's your electric bill every month? What's your water bill? If those bills are through the roof, you really don't live in an affordable home after all. So it really is critically important from my perspective and our city council's perspective that everything be affordable if you're in affordable housing, from the rent or the mortgage, along with all of your utility bills, to make sure that you can comfortably continue to live in that home. And so the sustainability movement is not some niche thing. It really is critically important and completely intertwined to the success of the greater Phoenix metro region. If we don't have adequate sustainability plans, if we don't actually really focus on implementing them with fidelity, we're not going to have a region to bring people to. And so quite honestly, that's why the city of Tempe, we're already on our climate action plan 2.0, because we recognize how important it is to be forward thinking in this area for the residents who frankly live here now, but also for the people and the investments that we're trying to attract to the city of Tempe and to the surrounding regions.
Who are some of the partners that have kind of walked beside you and really helped you with some of those innovations? I know you talked, we talked in our pre-interview about Arizona State University and organizations like Greenlight Solutions. You talked about the tree planting. When you think of sustainability, what partnerships or what organizations have really kind of stepped forward and really helped you move things along?
Well, I would first say Arizona State University, first and foremost. I mean, obviously their main campus is right in our backyard of the city of Tempe. I mean, they were the first university in the country to have a dedicated school of sustainability, which showed how far ahead of the curve they frankly were in this very critically important area. And so we've been able to partner with ASU, with their faculty and administration, but we've also been able to partner with students on everything from climate action to food action plans. So, I mean, they have been, from my perspective, the most critical and most indispensable partner in terms of kind of working in a symbiotic kind of way to move the sustainability cause forward. There obviously are also other businesses that have very much kind of jumped on board and been very supportive in this area. But I have to, really first and foremost highlight ASU and the work they've done to not only frankly support sustainability, but when you create an entire division within your university that is dedicated to that issue, to talking about what it's all about, but obviously then identifying and kind of curating new technologies for the future. I mean, I honestly can't say enough good things about the work that they've done and the work that I know that they will continue to do under Dr. Crow's leadership. And
that's a great point. I know that with urban farming education, we're developing a pre-K through 12th grade curriculum, and it's for that very purpose. We know that there are complex issues that are going forward, and a lot of times, the narrative is that the bottom line is the dollar, where really there needs to be more of a shift to consider resources that you utilize, because without those resources, you're not going to move forward. We did a podcast in Venice, and it was a sustainability nonprofit, and that nonprofit talked about how they needed to build a dam to stop water coming in. And they said, the guy that I interviewed said, Joe, it wasn't for really the environmental impact. It was, if we didn't solve this, we wouldn't have businesses that would invest us anymore. So there really is that relationship between community needs, resources, and businesses. Let's dive in a little bit about your climate action. You said 2.0. What are some of the highlights of that? I know that this is something where different communities are looking in order to start these initiatives. What are some of the highlights from that planning process?
I've got to say the biggest highlight at a 30,000 foot level is the buy-in. I mean, I could talk about a lot of the programs and kind of point to sort of individual successes as a result of that plan and the work that our team at the City of Tempe has frankly done. But the biggest thing is changing the hearts and minds of people who initially were skeptical. I remember when I first came into public office in 2008, and I felt very much the same way about affordable housing. When I would talk about that issue when I was out on the campaign trail, you would hear people say, well, I don't know what you mean when you talk about affordable housing, and I don't know if I'm comfortable with that concept. And now, we literally can't approve market rate projects in the city of Tempe without people coming back and saying, well, where's the affordable housing? And I will say, well, it's not going to be in every project that we do, but the fact that now we don't even have to say it as the governing body for the city of Tempe, but our residents are the first people who will ask these questions and hold our feet to the fire about housing affordability for any project. It's the same thing I see now when you're talking about sustainability and resilience. At first, it was sort of an area that a lot of people didn't really understand, and they maybe thought it was sort of a passing fad, that people were talking about it, but in 2 years, no one's going to discuss these terms anymore, and it will just sort of fade. But now I get those same questions from our residents, which is, have we considered water use? Have we talked to this developer, if they want to build a building, about adding water saving and water retention features? Have we talked to them about adding solar panels to the roof? What aspects of the green building code are they going to be implementing in this project to ensure that it's actually going to be sustainable and it's not going to drain resources from the city of Tempe and from the state of Arizona? And so, many times, and once again, our green building code right now is currently in a voluntary state for the first sort of code cycle, which is roughly around 3 years. But frankly, we already have developers who come forward to the city council. They haven't even talked to us about the green building code. They haven't asked us any questions about it, but in their presentations, they'll say, we read through your green building code, we saw all of these different elements, and we're adding 7 or 8 features of the green building code in a voluntary way because we recognize how critically important that is to the members of the city council, but even more importantly, to your residents and constituents. So when people are actually coming forward, whether it's your development community, or other folks, and they are frankly volunteering to take part in that green building code and to add those very sustainable elements into these new buildings without you even having to ask as mayor or as a city council member, that tells you that you've won and you're clearly very much on the right path.
Okay, so that's incredible, and I have to ask this question as a follow-up. What do you think, what do you attribute that change? What do you attribute that shift in mindset to?
I think it's people obviously can see some of the issues right in front of their own 2 eyes. But I think it's also, from a city council standpoint, it's all basically reading off the same sheet of music. If you're having the same conversations, myself and the other 6 members of the city council, and you're all telling your land use attorneys, your prospective developers, if you're saying that this is important, and they hear you basically speaking with one unified voice, they understand that this is something that they need to do if they're going to be accepted with open arms into the city of Tempe, not just once again by the city council, not just even by our professional staff, but frankly, by the nearly 200,000 people that call Tempe their home. And so I think it really is trying to make sure that you are, as much as you possibly can, reading off the same sheet of music, speaking with the same collective voice, and that's what begins to move the needle. Over time, people begin to realize that you're not talking about something that's a fad. It's not something that you're going to mention and then just sort of forget about 2 weeks from now, but that it's really going to be a sustained policy goal and a sustained objective by the city. And at some point, people, whether it's your residents or your developers or your businesses, they all begin to catch on and they all jump on board. And a lot of them then begin to recognize it's not that, because there was also this sort of perspective of, well, if I have to do all of this stuff in this sort of area of sustainability, is that going to make the cost of my project skyrocket to the point that I feel like I can't actually produce the building that I want to build? Is that going to make it impossible for me to run my business? And a lot of folks have come back and recognized, actually, it's going to make the overall water costs or the energy costs a lot lower, so I can build the building, and frankly, it will be much more inexpensive to operate, which will obviously help our bottom line. So these sustainability features and a lot of these elements in the green building code are not a detriment, frankly, to private sector development. Frankly, many times they're actually a benefit, to the developer and to the folks who are actually building those buildings and facilities. So, but I just think the big thing is when you're starting something new, and when you're talking about something that hasn't always been sort of part of the culture, you have to very much be committed to it and stay on message at all times and let people know we're going to do this. This is important to me, and regardless of who sits in my chair at some point, even if it's not Corey Woods, that same person is going to ask you the same things that I'm asking you. So we need to figure out a way to work together and to all kind of get on board and make this a more sustainable community for everyone.
Unifying message I think is really important. That's a great point. But we interviewed a general contractor at Chase Building Team, and they echoed everything you said.
Yeah, so they're a great company. I know them very well. So
they're incredible. And asking them why, they just went down the list. Well, by using sustainable products, they're better for the environment. But in most cases, they provide a safer work environment for employees.
Right.
No brainer. And then they talked about the additional savings to the client. So he said sometimes it's just about educating the public.
Yep.
We're an institution, nonprofit that loves to educate, and it sounds to me like you're doing the exact same thing. Before we dive into, go ahead.
I just say to your point, because right, I want to do exactly what. I mean, these have been sitting in front of me for 40 minutes now, and I'm telling you right now, I've got to eat one. It gets uncomfortable at some point. But what I was going to say was that, yeah, I mean, change is hard. Whether you are in business, whether you're just a resident. There is something comforting for most people about I put my left shoe on before my right shoe every morning. I have my morning cup of coffee and I read the paper every morning before I get my workout in at 6:15 in the morning every day, and that's what helps to put me on a very sort of comfortable path. So I understand whenever you're talking about something that's different than the way you've been doing things for frankly years or perhaps even decades, whether you're a business, whether you're an individual, it's going to be uncomfortable. But what we will ask people to do, all people, is to open up their minds, try to become educated, and frankly receive this information. Because frankly, once you receive information about what the sustainability movement and what a lot of these things frankly can do for you, how they can help lower costs and make things frankly cheaper and frankly better for not just your family, but generations of families beyond, you will frankly find out it's not nearly as scary as you thought. Actually, it's probably going to be much more of a benefit than a hindrance.
That's what we're hearing time and again. So now we have the great outcome of your journey here. So anybody that can hop on the light rail and see comes to Red Velvet Bakery. So these have a great story. They're named after the light rail. So are you going to go for the cupcake or the cookie?
I gotta go with the cookie. Now here's the thing. I love cookie dough, so I'm obviously very much drawn. I'm torn here, but I see two different kinds of chocolate chips in this cookie, and blue is my favorite color. So I gotta go here first.
Okay, so I'm gonna go for the cupcake.
All right.
I'm gonna do the traditional tasting.
Perfect.
What does it remind you of? I don't know. For me, just by looking at it, it reminds me of Oscar the Grouch. I don't know why.
Yeah, I get that. I totally get that.
Yeah, let's see.
Let's see here.
Oh yeah.
Okay, this was well worth the wait.
Yeah.
I mean, the waiting was difficult for a while, but quite honestly, I feel totally vindicated.
I know that if you're watching this, you probably saw my attention being drawn back. But for me, I think the test of any good restaurant is, are you willing to drive across town? Mm-hmm. And you come back twice, so the answer is obviously yes.
For exceptional quality baked goods, I will drive well across town. So, I mean, you know, and my whole mouth will be blue when I get back to the office. I'll have to explain that to my staff about what happened. But the fact of the matter is, once again, it's all worth it.
Yeah, you're going to have to fill in the blanks. So why is your mouth blue? I'm supporting a local business in Phoenix and promoting the light rail. So, yeah, this is delicious.
Well, it really is. Like, first of all, it's the different kinds of chocolate chips here. There's white chocolate chips, there's brown chocolate chips, but also it's the texture. I mean, the cookies, it's got kind of a crispier exterior, but the inside is really soft and chewy. So it's absolutely delicious.
Well, you might not know this. I don't know if Maisha told this or not, but these are her grandma's recipes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep. So it's been in the family. The other thing.
Well, Grandma definitely can bake. I can tell you that right now.
She knows her stuff. The other thing about the Red Velvet too that we like to do is they do branded cupcakes as well too. Mm-hmm. So they'll put your brand on the cupcake and they'll push it out. So anytime you're having an event or employee appreciation, this is our favorite gift.
I also need to be very clear with you. It might be 10 o'clock in the morning, but I'm eating this whole thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Like I'm literally not going to put this back. Like, this is not a taste test. I'm going to devour this entire cookie and perhaps take some of these back to my staff.
You don't feel bad about it either, do you?
I feel no guilt at all. Absolutely. No guilt whatsoever. I told you, I worked out so I could eat.
Well, I'll tell you what, Corey, this has been a great experience. I love hearing about all the work you're doing. You know, honestly, it's been informative, but it's been inspiring. Mm-hmm. Knowing that you've had a mission, a purpose in Tempe. It started with affordable housing, and you've ingrained that into the culture of Tempe, but it's expanded, and you're doing great things and having a great impact. So
thank you.
Thanks for coming. Love to see your journey continue, and don't be a stranger.
I definitely won't. Thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
All right, absolutely. All right, thank you. That was good.
Thank you for joining the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Click subscribe and like for ongoing insightful conversations. Explore our webpage for show notes and additional resources. Visit our guests' webpage for deeper insights. Your engagement is the foundation of our journey, and until next time, keep pursuing wisdom.